What's up, everyone? Welcome. Happy Friday. A couple announcements before we start. Last week, I marked my 4th year on YouTube, and I released the new 4.0 version of the Beato book. For those of you that have bought the Beato book in the past and want to upgrade and have not gotten the email about it, send me an email through my website, rickbeato.com. For those of you that don't have the Beato book, I'm having a sale on that and my ear training course, which is 25% off, and the coupon code is right on the screen here, RB612, today's date. So the new Beato book 4.0, there's about, 50 new pages to it or so. I have sections on things that were not in the original book, like chord progressions for songwriters, things about parallel major and minor. A lot of the things that I've talked about, over the last 6 months or so, that actually were not in my book, and they are now. Because people will say, "Well, I went to your book and I didn't find it." There's more things on spread triads. There's a lot more examples in it. So that's what's new in the Beato book. So the story I'm going to tell is something that it's one of these college stories. Boy, my college, high school and college entrance was so rocky. Those of you that know the story about me not getting into college because I flunked the audition at 2 different music schools, and then ended up re-auditioning my freshman year of college after a freshman guitar student taught me these classical guitar pieces well enough that I could actually pass the audition. I got into school at Ithaca College, or at Fredonia State University, or I got into school at Fredonia State University as a history major. That's where this guy, Phil Sasso, taught me to play the classical guitar pieces well enough to get into Ithaca College, where I had also failed the audition to get in for guitar. And then 6 years later, I was a professor there at Ithaca after I got my master's degree. So me, who could not get into school for music and got rejected by the guitar teacher there, hired me to be a professor there 6 years later. So I went from not being able to get in. Well, there's another part of the story that I don't tell that happened in my sophomore year of college. So every music student needs to take sight singing. Now, what is sight singing? Sight singing is when you there's different components, but one part of it is ear training. So learning to recognize intervals, chord progressions, all the things that are in my ear training course. Right? And there's another part of it that is dictation, where you hear a melody and you write it down, or you actually look at a piece of music and you sing it. It's called sight singing. So you'd get a simple melody, and they'd give you a starting note. You don't have to have perfect pitch or anything, and you'd have to sing it. Well, I always did really well in sight singing because of the ear training part, because the intervals and things like that were really easy for me. But the little secret that I had was that, and when I came in as a guitar major, my first semester at Ithaca, when I was a transfer student, the second day I was there, I transferred into being a bass major. And one of the reasons that I did that is because of this, what I'm going to tell you here, this story about how I almost flunked out of music school. So I couldn't really read music. So everything I had learned by then to get into college, I had learned by ear. One of the reasons that I didn't pass the audition was that my teacher taught me classical guitar pieces by rote. When I say by rote, meaning by memory. He just showed them to me, and I just copied what he did because I couldn't read the music. So when I played the bass, because I played the bass from 7th grade on, and all I would do was just listen to the parts, and I would memorize them. And I would just look at the music, but I really didn't look at the music, and I would play. So I get into my 4th semester of sight singing. So you got sight singing 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you can't pass all 4 semesters, you cannot get a music degree. And a lot of people, second semester of their sophomore year, would fail out of music school. And unfortunately would be people like percussion majors. They would actually take 2 years of school, not be able to pass sight singing because they couldn't do the interval part of it. They couldn't do the ear training part. They could read the rhythms and things like that, but they couldn't do the ear training, and they would fail, and they'd have to actually go into another major, and they could not get a music degree. So I come into my my sight singing final, sight singing 4, and we had a different teacher. Sight singing was split into half. There was sight singing, and there was this thing called Del Crows, or that was a music and movement thing that dealt with improvisation. It's a I don't want to get into that, but anyways, this teacher, his name was Jack Stevenson. So I come into this thing, and he wouldn't normally be doing the test. So I go into this room. I remember it like it was yesterday. There's a music stand there, and he said, open up to this page 4. Open it up. And there's treble clef there. It's got music. It's very simple. Quarter notes, eighth notes, maybe a tie, 1 tie, 2 ties in it. It's 4 bars. Okay, here's your starting note. Boom. Plays the note. And I stand there. And nothing. And he says, okay, Mr. Beato, you can start. And I said, I can't read it. He says, what? I said, I can't read it. I can't read music. I'm second semester, sophomore year. I've music history, all these things, doing really incredibly well in school, right? And all the other parts of it, intervals, everything, no problem. Now, I knew music theory. This is the weird part of it. Modes, scales, all that stuff that I teach on here, I knew all that stuff. I could improvise. I knew how to play over chord changes. I understood chord progressions, but I couldn't read any music. I always did everything by ear. Okay, so if there was a C to A flat, I didn't know. I mean, I could kind of pick out the notes in treble clef. Could not do the sight singing. So he says to me, well, you always pass. I'm looking at your grades here, and all your sight singing tests, or all your ear training tests, are all A's. Yeah, those are all intervals and things like that. Chord progressions, major, minor chords, diminished chords, inversions, all that stuff, no problem. I can't do this. He said, well, I can't let you pass and get your music degree. And then, or he said, he said, I should fail you for this. And I said, I realize that. So he says, if you promise to practice this, I'm going to pass you. I'm going to give you an A in music theory, or in sight singing. But you got to promise you'll practice that. I promise. So the next day, I went and found this kid who was a freshman. His name was Tim Newton. I'm still friends with him. He was the only kid at college that had perfect pitch. Even though I didn't know what perfect pitch was, people said Tim has perfect pitch. He was a freshman piano major. And I was telling Tim about this. He's like, I'll teach you how to read. He's a freshman. I'm a sophomore, right? So I would go into the practice rooms late at night, and Tim would help me out. And he would teach me where the notes were. I would sit at the piano, and I would sight sing, and he would say, no, it's this note, go to here, and this is how the rhythm goes. And Tim taught me how to read music as a second semester college student. And then he told me, when I said, what is perfect pitch? Because he said to me, I thought you had perfect pitch. That's what everybody says. I said, yeah, everybody thinks I have perfect pitch because I could sing a note. A flat. Is that an A flat, Billy?
I don't know.
We'll go check it. I had really good ear for pitch, right? That see, I'm a little bit sharp on it. So, and I said, no, I don't have perfect pitch. And he says, I said, I said, "So you have perfect pitch?" He says, "Yeah." And I start playing notes, and he can name me the things. And I just couldn't believe it. He was the only person I knew that had perfect pitch at college. And I would play chords. He could tell me the notes. He said, "Yeah, I've been able to do it since I was a kid." So Tim taught me, really over the course of that semester and the next semester, how to read music. There's the interesting thing about this, and this is really this is where music education has always been lacking to me. Because the same problem that I had about not getting into college the first time by not passing the audition, what they weren't testing for was music aptitude. Okay, do you have the capacity to learn these things? Do you have a great ear, an unusually good ear where you can recognize things? And then the same thing happened with sight singing. If you can't pass one of these sections of it, you cannot get your degree. Not only did I passed it, I should have failed it, but he let me pass it. And then I was a professor with him. He was still on the faculty when I came back as a professor 4 years later. Okay, so sophomore year, that I finished junior, senior, went to 2 years of grad school in Boston at NEC. Then I came back and I was teaching there. And I'm in the faculty lounge seeing all these other professors that were my professors 2 years ago, and I'm on the faculty now. So the moral of this is that people always talk about, oh, Wes Montgomery couldn't read music, or so-and-so couldn't read music. It's not reading music that's necessarily important. You should be able to do basic music reading. You should know the notes and the staff, and you should be able to read basic rhythms. Quarter notes, eighth notes with ties, 16th notes, triplets, things like that. You should be able to do that. Absolutely no question you should be able to do that. But your ear is the most important thing to inform you. So I got through learning all these pieces in orchestra. I was the first chair bass player because I would go listen to the orchestral, to the pieces that we were doing. I'd go to the listening library and I'd listen to them and I'd memorize the bass parts. And this is what actually helped me. You know, a lot of people say, oh, Rick, your memory, you have a great memory for music. And that was kind of my coping mechanism for being a good musician, was being able to remember things like an entire piece, what the notes were, what the order of things were, how to listen to people. And ultimately, those skills are the absolute most important things to becoming a great musician. Having a great ear, right? This is one of the biggest parts of music aptitude, having a great ear. Knowing music theory. Why should you know music theory? Because music theory is the way that you can communicate musical ideas verbally, okay? Or written through when I write on the whiteboard, I'm communicating music theory, chord progressions, melodies, whatever it might be. When I say to you, okay, let's say you want to do a harmony on a song, and the chord is C major. Well, if the chord is C major and the melody is E, you've got two possible harmony notes, G and C, okay? Those are the other notes of the C major chord. Well, you have to know what notes are in a C major chord, C, E, and G. If the melody note is G, you have C and E. The other leftover notes of a C major triad are good notes to harmonize that melody note with, okay? Now, yeah, you can do it by ear. Absolutely, you can do it by ear. But having the musical theory, having the knowledge of that is unbelievably important. And frankly, if I didn't need to be able to write music, because that's what I wanted to do at the time. I wanted to write music. I wanted to write music so I wanted to do arrangements and things like that, and I wanted to write the parts out. In order to do that, I had to be able to read rhythms, read melodies, know the notes on the staff, where they were, and notate these things. And I had a lot of very complex ideas that I was trying to notate. And through the help of this friend of mine, Tim, he taught me how to read rhythms, and ultimately, I became an incredibly good sight singer. I had the ear part of it, where recognizing chord progressions, all those kind of things. But I became excellent at dictation as well. And dictation is things like transcribing solos and writing them down. This is something that we do. I do on this channel. Billy does on here all the time. There's constantly, when I go on my Instagram and I play, we do transcriptions of all the improvisations, things like that. When I was in college, really starting my junior year on, I did so many transcriptions, because that opened up this whole window for me where I could notate things that I wanted to learn. Any types of solos I wanted to learn, I'd be able to write these things down. So this is why the ear training course, the Beato book, these are why these things are so important. Coupon code RB612. That's 25% off the ear training course and 25% off my new Beato book 4.0. I also tell people that is honestly how I support this channel without having to do any type of ads or anything like that. You notice I don't run ads before any of this stuff. Well, there's ads before the videos. Doesn't matter if they're demonetized, whatever. I couldn't take the ads off anyways, because so many of my videos are demonetized. But that's how I support doing this for you guys, support my family, is through things I sell through there, through the Beato Club. I have a thing in the Beato Club. One of the levels of it is where I do a reaction video to your music, like a critique, kind of like a what makes this song great, or what would make your song great if you did this. Anyway, so this is really another thing that I've been thinking about as of late, as to what the importance of these things are and why music education is so important for people to have. This is why it's been important for me to give back through YouTube. It's funny because somebody said on Twitter this past week, it was from the live stream I did last week, that there's a channel called Rick Beato Rus, R-U-S. Duane! Thank you. Appreciate that. There's a channel called Rick Beato Rus, R-U-S. And it's a Russian Russian YouTube channel that are my What Makes This Song Great videos done with voiceovers. And this is painstaking work. And the guy that did it, Yevgeny, I talked to him before he started. He asked me if it was cool. He sent me some samples of it. I said, fantastic. Because he told me, he said, look, I think people in Russia would love your videos, but they're very hard to translate, especially with the music names and things like that in Russian, because you have to put... He said it's easier with a voiceover for people to understand it. And then obviously all the musical things are you just listen to. So he's done, oh God, probably 50 episodes or so. And people were surprised that I support him doing that. I said, this is fantastic. This is great. This whole thing of how to, why to educate people and to give back. These key people in my life that have helped me through the goodness of their hearts, teaching me things. All this stuff has gone into me giving back here on YouTube. All these different topics, right down to things like my last video that I did, which was Glyn John's miking technique. These things, I first heard about that, and I didn't even mention it in the video. I was doing a song for a movie called Elizabethtown. It was a Cameron Crowe movie. And it was a closing credits song. It was called The Same in Any Language, that I did with this band I-9. And Cameron Crowe called me out of the blue one day and says, Rick, it's Cameron Crowe. I want you to do this song for my new movie, Elizabethtown. I thought, wow, Cameron Crowe, Almost Famous, Jerry Maguire, Singles, all these great movies. Huge, fan of his. So he says that he wrote the song with his wife at the time, Nancy Wilson from Heart. And would I produce the track and have the band do it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So the guy that ended up mixing the song's name was Jack Joseph Puig. So I went out to L.A. for the mix, and Nancy Wilson was there. We spent the whole day talking. But Jack, I was there for 2 days, actually. Jack produced the Jellyfish record, Spilt Milk, which is an amazing record. And I said to him, I said, Jack, how did you track the drums? How did you mic the drums? Because they sound amazing. And he said, oh, let me show you. So he goes out. I told a similar story with Jim Scott. And he goes out. There's a drum set there at Ocean Way, Raider Studio. He said, I used the Glenn Johns miking technique. He said, I think he told me that he assisted Glenn Johns back before he became a producer. And he said, you put the mics here. And he showed me himself about how he did Jellyfish. So he showed me, and I showed you guys through this, right? So Jack learned it from Glenn Johns. I learned it from Jack, and I taught it to you guys or whoever watched the video. If you don't watch the video, you should watch it because it's a great way to mic drums because it only takes 3 or 4 microphones or mic pre's to do it, and it sounds phenomenal. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. If I wasn't lucky enough, I was fortunate enough to have produced these things and got Cameron Crowe's attention. And it put me in a situation where I was working with this really big mixing engineer and producer, which, of course, I'm going to ask questions because that's what I do, because I always want to learn, right? And because I learned it, I came back, tried it in my sessions many times I used Glenn Johns. I didn't use it all the time, but I used it a lot of times on the records that I thought really it was warranted for. And it's a great technique that, you don't want to have lost. So I did a video on that. And these are the kind of things that I'm trying to do, that more things like that I want to have on my channel as well, to keep trying to further not just music education with learning music theory and ear training, things like that, but also recording engineering, music production, things that I don't want to see lost. Okay, so questions on here. Billy, any good questions in here? I'm kind of glancing over, looking in here.
There's what do you think about the rock music scene in the future?
Well, it's interesting because there was an article in Rolling Stone online that I responded to, somebody that was in the story the other day. And I said, look, rock music is doing great because there's a massive progressive metal scene. I just had Tosin Abasi on my channel. I've had Pliny. I've had Misha and Periphery. I've had Aaron Marshall from Intervals. I've had a lot of people in the progressive metal community. And that's a huge guitar. That is a really, really big guitar movement that's happening. And that is rock. If anything's rock, that's rock for sure. Now, are there commercial, records out there? Thank you, Anthony. Are there commercial rock records that are in the top 50? Pretty much no. This year, this was part of this article, there's nothing in the top 50 songs of the year that was rock. Nothing. And the only thing that they said in this Rolling Stone article, that they say Billie Eilish was alternative. And so thank you, Anthony. Joel, would I do a What Makes a Song Great on Jeff Beck? Yes, I will. Do I think Tosin, this Brian says, Brian Como, do I think Tosin Abasi's approach can bring back rock to music mainstream? It would be great if it could. making people aware of these movements when there's not a radio format to back it is one of the tricky things. Typically, people became aware of music worldwide because of record labels and publicists and things like that would write stories about them. And to a certain degree, radio was always manipulated. At first, through things like payola, where they would pay radio stations to play, and major labels would buy their way on with new artists. But frankly, that's how people got to hear new artists. Now you have to be playlisted, and there's just it's always gatekeepers everywhere. The only place that there are not gatekeepers are social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. There's no real, there are no, I mean, yeah, of course, if you're Casey Neistat, he used to be pushed all the time by YouTube. And there are people that are pushed by YouTube all the time that have huge YouTube channels. Not me. I have a big YouTube channel, but not where YouTube cares. And that's funny because people ask me, Rick, you must have people at YouTube you talk to. I was like, I've never talked to anybody at YouTube ever. I don't even have a check mark on my channel. I think they're waiting until I get to 10 million subscribers before I get a check mark. Anyways, so the moral of all this is that, learning about music and how music is constructed is not the same thing as learning how to read music. There can be two completely different things. Should you be able to read music? Yes. Basic music you should be able to read. Like I said, quarter notes, eighth notes, tied notes, triplets, and 16th notes you should understand. You don't have to know it a lot, but it's important. But music theory you should definitely know. Do I know Dick Longale? I never met Dick Longale, but he's a famous teacher in Rochester. Thank you, Hobo. Appreciate that. Thank you, Dennis. Dick Longale was a very famous guitar teacher in Rochester that taught all the big guitar players. He kind of was a little bit before my time. He taught my teachers in Rochester. He taught all the older, the one generation older than me guitar players studied with Dick Longale. He was just one of those guys. Great, apparently incredibly good teacher and guitar player. New Beato book 4.0 is out. For those of you that have bought it in the past, any of the other versions, write me. If you haven't gotten the mailer saying that the new version's out and you can do your pay what you want upgrade, write me through the website, through rickbeato.com, and you can do that. I have my sale going on right now with the coupon code RB612, 25% off that and my ear training program. Like I said, if you want to support the channel, basically buying my book is like paying for half of a guitar lesson at any music store here in this country. And you get 750 other videos with it or whatever I have on my channel. I have a lot. By the way, for those of you that are looking for my old live streams that I do, I always archive my live streams after the weekends. And they're in an archived live stream playlist on my YouTube channel. FYI. I always forget to mention that on here, that they're there, because people say, what happened to that live stream from 2 weeks ago? I wanted to watch that. They're all still on YouTube, but they're only in my live stream playlist. Okay, so if you want to go back in and watch some of those older live streams, that's how you can do it. But what I would say is go in and watch some of my old videos. I had in the past 2 weeks, at least I think 12 or 13 videos hit 1 million views. I have, probably about 40 videos that have over 1 million views on my channel, including the first video I ever made on YouTube from June 8th, 2016. Hit 1 million views last week, which I was very, very psyched about. The first video I did on YouTube on this channel hit 1 million views. Took 4 years to do it, but it did it, which is cool. Anyway, so that's the story here. Support the channel. Check out the Beato Club. And you guys are amazing, amazing, amazing. I appreciate it. I've got a new video I'm working on right now. You see guitar amps behind me. I got another video coming out in a couple days that I think you'll really dig. Thanks for watching, everyone.